remarks at the Munich Security Conference, Vice President Vance condemned free speech violations in the UK, particularly. Could you respond? What is your message?
I have an idea. We have the man right here. Come on. Let's go, JD. We're putting you on stage.
Great. Yeah, look, I said what I said, which is that we do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies, but we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British, of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and by extension American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history there.
In a heated exchange on live TV, J.D. Vance, Q Senator representing Ohio and current US, the Vice President called out Prime Minister Keir Starmer on crucial issues such as free speech and border security, both in the UK and Europe. This heated confrontation also included pivotal discussions on the state of public services in the UK. The Vice President criticised the Labour leader for his government's substantial overseas aid contributions, while domestic issues related to taxation and public services were ignored.
$5 billion package of disability benefits, so-called reform, being moral. There is nothing moral about cutting benefits for what may be up to 1 million people. This is not about morality. This is about the Treasury's wish to balance the country's books on the back of the most vulnerable and poor people.
The backlash was immediate, as swift reactions followed Vance's criticism of Starmer, who could only watch as more people agreed with the American senator. So, what started as a routine political debate quickly escalated into a confrontation. Now a new voice has been added to the ongoing debate. Tech billionaire and owner of social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, Elon Musk is a man who never fails to express his opinion.
In Britain, I kid you not, how can this be real? They are releasing convicted pedophiles from prison in order to put people in prison for Facebook posts. There were, and this is I'm simply stating a fact, there were migrant rape gangs in England that would run around and prey on young girls, gang rape them, and some people found that objectionable, which obviously it should be objectionable, and they were upset about that, and so they complained about it online.
Elon Musk has joined the ongoing debate and has called out Starmer for his approach, which apparently favours those outside Britain more than those living within its borders. Musk questioned the intelligence behind Starmer's leadership style and pointed out how billions of pounds are sent overseas, meanwhile the UK's budget has a black hole. He went ahead to highlight rising taxes and the state of public services, which are crumbling. Yet evidence suggests the Labour government led by Starmer seems more focused on foreign aid than fixing the issues at home.
I think the number of people that have been arrested for just social media posts is bananas. It's in the thousands.
Yes, several thousand people have been given prison sentences in the UK for social media posts where there was no explicit link to actual violence, but they just said it encouraged violence. I'm like, well, did anyone actually do anything as a result of that media post? Well, no. But they're just, and then they have a prison overcrowding situation in the UK, so they're quite literally releasing convicted pedophiles and putting people in jail for Facebook posts. That's an actual thing happening in Britain.
But Musk wasn't done. He spoke about the NHS schools and INF structure, which affects the British public health and safety. This wasn't just about the UK's political landscape, it was about the future of Europe itself.
Where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision.
Vance's strong words rang clear, pointing out that Europe's open border policies and growing suppression of free speech were threatening the very foundation of its democratic values. The stakes were high and the question loomed large. Could Europe and the UK course correct before it was too late? But what did the US Vice President say that has generated so much heat for Keir Starmer? Let's break it down. J.D. Vance, known for his blunt personality, didn't mince words when he addressed the problems plaguing Europe. He took aim at the continent's open border policies, calling them a ticking time bomb.
Up next for the chopping block of Saturday 5. I think it's you, Dame Andrea Jenkins, is it not?
It certainly is, yeah. Well, the Labour government has dropped free speech law after universities feared for China interests. Now, I was the former universities minister and I was tasked with bringing the free speech bill through Parliament.
Vance argued that Europe's reluctance to properly control its borders was creating chaos, overcrowded cities, rising crime and strained public services. But his criticism didn't stop there. He was equally concerned about the increasing suppression of free speech. According to Vance, European leaders are using political correctness as a tool to silence dissent, which is leaving citizens with little room to voice their concerns. He warned that if these issues aren't tackled head-on, then Europe is at risk of civilizational decline. In his view, the very values that made Europe great, including freedom, security and sovereignty, are being undermined.
The curtailing of free speech when debating any ideology, including religion, is a fundamental undermining of democracy. We've just had that discussion, in terms of the lockdowns and so on that we were talking about in the previous segment. And what we've got so wrong as a country is that in the pursuit of mass migration and settling people in this country, having allowed them to, immigrate to the United Kingdom in such large numbers, we have put a protective blanket.
Vance believes Europe is on the brink of losing everything that made it thrive, and if things don't change, it could be too late.
Some of them were inciting violence, Richard, and that is a crime. I mean,
some of them weren't, and they've still gone to jail, and that is totally unacceptable. So it's as simple as that.
So how do we deal with this, Richard? Because we've got the Free Speech Union talking about taking the Home Secretary to court. Does Labour care about free speech? They say they do.
Oh, I don't think that Labour want free speech at all. Of course they say they do. They have to say that. But all of their actions show exactly the opposite. And there's information that's come to me that we'll be talking about next week, which clearly indicates that they want to suppress all forms of criticism, legitimate criticism or debate. Look, no one wants to support frontline police officers more than us at Reform. But where the leadership gets it wrong, then, like in all walks of life, we all make mistakes, we all mess up occasionally. Much better to say, I'm so sorry, chaps, I've got this wrong, I'll learn the lesson, we're sorted. In this case, the Chief Constable of Essex Police needs basically to say to Alison Pearson, we've got this wrong, I'm sorry, here's a fulsome apology, we'll learn from it and it won't happen again. Instead, what's actually happening is they're in a hole, and rather than apologise, they're keeping on digging, and they've set up a gold command, which is, is basically used for a very serious incident, stroke murder, stroke terrorism.
Keir Starmer has often touted the UK's commitment to free speech as a cornerstone of its democratic values. He proudly defends the nation's long history of protecting the right to express opinions, even when those opinions challenge the status quo. However, the reality of free speech in the UK isn't as clear-cut as Starmer suggests, especially since Labour took over. In recent months, there has been an increasing crackdown on what people can say, especially online. Social media posts that once would have been viewed as harmless opinions are now leading to arrests. Censorship is growing, with more individuals being punished for speaking out against certain policies or expressing controversial views. Critics argue that the Starmer stance is out of touch with the reality faced by many in the UK, where free speech is being quietly suppressed in the name of political correctness and social order. The UK's free speech landscape is shifting, and not in the direction Starmer claims. Besides the threat to free speech, border control in Europe has become a hot-button issue, especially in the UK, where rising immigration numbers have sparked heated debates. European countries, including the UK, have seen an influx of people crossing borders without adequate checks or management.
And I also talked about economic decline. Well, we're getting poorer. Funny thing, isn't it? The more immigration goes up, the poorer we become. It's truly incredible that of the last 2 million people that came into Britain under a Conservative government, those that came in from outside the European Union, of those 2 million, only 16% are working. Only 16% are earning and paying tax. The rest effectively become a burden on the state. We need some frank, plain speaking. And I say that as somebody and a party that I lead. We want no truck with extremism of any kind at all.
While immigration is often framed as a humanitarian effort, many argue that the lack of control is causing more harm than good. Vice President JD Vance, along with many citizens across Europe, has been vocal about the risks of unchecked immigration. He warns that it's not just about security, it's about the strain on public services, the pressure on housing, and the growing sense of division within communities in the UK.
Citizens, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. And the problem is created by unbridled immigration in the first place. If we cut back immigration dramatically, which we absolutely must do as a country, and we repurposed existing buildings, vacant offices above shops, derelict brownfield sites, of which there are many in London. As you go around London, you will see them all over the place. If we repurpose those, we wouldn't have the housing shortage that we've got. It's that we've turned our back on our borders, and we've got a ridiculously tight regulatory system. One of the things, I read the National Planning Policy Framework that came out yesterday, and one of the things that struck me as I read it was none of the regulations that make development difficult have been removed. So development still has to be sustainable, in other words, comply with all the net zero requirements, which means that it's extremely costly to create it.
This has led to overcrowded areas, increasing crime rates, and mounting frustration as governments fail to take action. Vance, alongside many Europeans, believe that until leaders start addressing these concerns with real policies, the border crisis will only get worse.
The social contract in Britain, Zia Youssef, is it still there? Is it still a thing? And if so, do you think it's working or is it broken?
If it is, it's hanging by a thread. And that thread is getting ever thinner. So if you look at every aspect of the social contract, not only do we have the heaviest tax burden on working people in this country since the Second World War, we also get far less for that money as taxpayers than we ever have done. You try getting a GP appointment, try going to accident. Tens of thousands of British people have to wait 3 days or more in accident and emergency every year. We don't have enough prison space. Our roads are in an awful state. Clearly, our education system needs improvement. So on the one hand, you have far less taxpayer value than you've had in generations. And if you look at the social contract between young people and elder generations, if you're a young person now in this country, well, look at the numbers. We have a quarter of our young adults, in fact, closer to a third, actually, of our young adults, 20 to 34, still live at home with their parents. Not only is buying a home.
Interestingly, Keir Starmer has faced increasing criticism for his failure to address the growing concerns of citizens regarding immigration and rising crime in the UK. But, despite the mounting frustrations, Starmer has been hesitant to take decisive action. Many argue that he's more focused on political correctness and appeasing the establishment than actually tackling the issues that matter to the public. While ordinary citizens are struggling with overcrowded communities and growing crime rates, Starmer's government has been slow to act, leading to a growing disconnect between the political elite and the general public. This divide is becoming more apparent as leaders like Starmer continue to push policies that ignore the voices of everyday people. Citizens feel like their concerns are being dismissed while politicians remain entrenched in their positions, unwilling to confront the hard truths that could help resolve the issues plaguing Europe. Overall, the open border policies in the UK have placed immense strain on public services, leaving hospitals, schools and social services struggling to keep up with the increased demand. With more people arriving every day, these services, which were already under pressure, are now stretched to their limits. Hospitals are facing overcrowding, with patients waiting longer for care, while schools are dealing with overcrowded classrooms, making it harder to provide quality education. Social services too are overwhelmed, trying to support a growing population with limited resources. But what does the government do? The British public is growing increasingly frustrated with a feeling that their voices are being ignored. As immigration continues to rise, citizens are questioning why their government isn't addressing the real consequences of these policies. The concerns of the British people, whether about job security, housing, or access to essential services, are being sidelined by politicians who seem more focused on maintaining political correctness than solving these pressing issues. And all this is why JD Vance and Elon Musk are calling out Keir Starmer. Frankly, political and social divisions are deepening. Citizens are growing frustrated with the rising crime rates, overcrowded areas, and lack of control over immigration, while political leaders seem more focused on maintaining the status quo. The debate over free speech has only added fuel to the fire. Many are feeling that their voices are being silenced by government policies that prioritise political correctness over open dialogue. This notion has led to greater polarisation as the gap between the political elite and everyday citizens widens. Leaders like Keir Starmer, who appear disconnected from the struggles of ordinary people, are facing increasing criticism for failing to address the real issues. If you found this political discussion engaging, like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting political discussion.